Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and I'm also a doctoral student of psychology. Today, I want to talk about some psychological biases and barriers that actually destroy your finances. And I'm a person who really does enjoy taking care of my finances. I'm pretty specific, I'm thrifty, I am very frugal, right? And so I do enjoy these types of videos. And interesting enough, this video was requested. So it sounds like some of you guys do also enjoy things like that, which is very fun. I like that. And today is pretty research packed, which is also one of the fun videos, right? And so we're going to talk about these biases together. The first one is probably one of the more common ones and the more common known ones, which is a present bias, hyperbolic discounting, right? And so what that basically is a tendency to prioritize immediate rewards over larger later benefits. And studies in behavioral economics actually show that a lot of people they often choose smaller, sooner rewards over larger later benefits, even when it's irrational to some extent, or not irrational, but illogical. Okay. So you may choose to spend money now instead of saving it or investing it. That's the best example. And a lot of people do it. I think we all do it. We have done it, right? And we probably don't want to, but it's very common, okay? The next one is loss aversion. I think this one is one particularly that kind of annoys me because I feel like people who do this, they miss out on so great opportunities, okay? So sometimes we feel like the losses are more intense than the equivalent gain, okay? And some investors, for example, if you lost something in your stocks, like right now, when I'm recording this right now, stocks are not doing great. It could change in like a couple hours, right? But it's a really big dip. Like yesterday, it was such a big dip, it fluctuated. In the morning, it was really low. And then the afternoon, like before the market closed, it went up again. And that, I don't see fluctuations like that. Now, I'm not a person who like obsessively looks at stuff like this. My significant other, he works in finance and he like checks it like all the time. I don't do that, but I am aware that's quite a big fluctuation. And some people, what they do is because they're so afraid of taking risks because the loss felt so painful, they might refuse to invest further. They might refuse to sell something, or they may avoid beneficial risks altogether. And I think what happens is some people are so afraid of loss, they might not even invest in general. So some people, they're even afraid to get into stocks. And you don't have to, by the way. I don't know much about stocks. I do know a little bit, but actually growing up, I knew more about real estate because my dad has a lot of properties. That's how he kind of invested. But I know about stocks now because of my significant other. But some people are afraid of stocks because they feel like they can't control it and they're afraid of that loss. But they don't realize that over time, a lot of it can be very helpful. And the research in 1979 shows that a lot of times people feel more emotional results, pain actually, when they feel loss comparison to the equivalent gain. And unfortunately, this can also be a very challenging balance if if anyone has some like trauma about finances. Sometimes you might see that a lot of children who come from foster care, they're very, very afraid to spend money, or they overly spend money because of this imbalance that we see sometimes, okay? The next one is overconfidence bias. This happens a lot. Overestimating your knowledge or skill, especially common in investing or any investments, actually, anything financially, okay? And so research found in 2001 shows that individual investors who trade frequently, not everyone, so I don't want you guys to be triggered by this research, but some people who trade very, very frequently actually underperform. I don't want to be the person to say it because I also don't know much about finances, so it's not right for me to say it, but I'm just basing it off the research. Basically, a lot of people who trade often based on this research, they actually are overconfident about their understanding of stocks. That's what the research says, okay? The next one is anchoring, okay? This one, a lot of people do it. I do it too, and I'm trying not to. Sometimes we rely heavily on the first piece of information we encountered, okay? And this research is 1974. I'm going to use my example because I think it's helpful. Growing up, I always knew about investing in real estate. Both my parents, that's how they invest, real estate. That's what I've always learned. And so I didn't know, I stuck to that knowledge as that being the thing that I'm most familiar with. And then as I grew up, I learned more about stocks. And I was afraid at first to kind of take that risk because I just stuck to that first piece of information about real estate and not thinking about Like I always felt like real estate is like fundamental, right? That's the fundamental investment, but it's not always ideal for every single person, right? When I was in college, real estate is not realistic at all, right? That doesn't make any sense. However, stocks might be a little more realistic. And I wish I had been less afraid of challenging myself and getting into that stuff earlier when I was even doing my bachelor's degree. I could have done that a little bit. I did it after I graduated, soon after, but still, I still feel like it could have been beneficial had I had done it earlier. And that's a really good example of relying too heavily on the first piece of information encountered. You might avoid doing certain things because of a certain particular belief that you have. Another example is like you might believe a certain price point, like you believe that arbitrary number is that particular price point, and you might misjudge a good deal or a bad deal because of that price point, because that was the first piece of information that you encountered. That was actually, I think, part of the research, that one. The next one is status quo bias. Strong preference to keep things the same, very similar, but not necessarily similar. But I have an example for this one as well. So 1988, it shows that a lot of people in financial and non-financial choices, a lot of people want to keep things the same. I'm going to give this example because I still do it, and I'm going to be honest about it, okay? Insurance rates, okay? I have the same car insurance provider, State Farm, since when I first started driving when I was 16. And I have I'm a very careful driver, so I have a very good rate. But I imagine if I transfer to another insurance company, I'd probably get a little even cheaper. Like my insurance rate is so low, you guys would be surprised, and it's very low. I'm just very careful about things like this, but I was very meticulous about it because it's also the type of car you have, how it can be covered. I still do full coverage, but I don't have any, like I buy, like my car, I paid it with cash, but a lot of times you can switch these things over and get something lower, especially because if you've had insurance for a long time, I think the length that you have a certain insurance will translate onto when you get another one. I don't know how to explain that. And so that will make it look less for the next one, I believe. But then my fear, I guess, is like, let's say I switch from State Farm to Geico, for example. Geico, I'll only be for like a year. I lost all those years I had with State Farm. And then I feel like the next time if I switch, it will be higher because of that. And so I don't want to lock into that, like an insurance that I'm not comfortable or familiar with. So I admit I do this. And it probably is costing me money to some extent. It's true. There's probably a cheaper plan out there. I do it with my internet provider as well. That's true. My house that I have right now, the one I've had for a while, is kind of in a more rural area. And when I first got this place, I only had one. There was only one internet provider, but now I think there's a couple, but I'm just still with that same one. And so I admit I do this, but a lot of times you guys can, challenge yourself and adjust this if you'd like. The next one is confirmation bias, paying attention to only information that you already believe, right? 1998 was the research. You could ignore warning signs about a bad investment because you believe that it was good. So you might ignore that, or you might focus on the financial plan that you have already without readjusting, okay? The next one is sunk cost fallacy. We do this with anything, right? Continuing behaviors that previously invested in resources. So basically, you don't want to lose an investment that you had. And so you don't want to waste your subscription. So it hurts you to kind of cut that off, right? Even if you're not using it, you might even stay in unfavorable contracts. People do this with relationships a lot, right? And that research was 1985. There's a more updated one, but that one's one of the original ones. And the next one is actually like, what would I even say? Herd behavior? That's actually what the research called it. 1992, where we follow the crowd instead of analyzing ourselves. And so this one, I have thoughts on it. I don't know if I have good thoughts on it because I'm not a person who studies finance. But an example is like I had mentioned, right now the stocks are kind of in a unique situation right now in the United States. And a lot of times this is actually a good time to buy stocks because they're low. But a lot of people are freaking out and they're actually selling their stocks. Or when the stocks are doing really well, they almost want to chase that and buy that stock because it's doing well. But in actuality, you're buying it at a more inflated price. Right now, it's like discounted, right? And so the crowd might be freaking out that the stocks are going low and they're going to sell all their stocks. But instead, this is an excellent time to hold on and then buy more, right? And so that's an example of hurt behavior where you're following the crowd instead of doing what's probably best for you investment wise. Okay. And the next one is mental accounting. 1985 is the research. People do this. I do this. Okay. We treat money differently depending on its source or category, right? We might, oh, this is my friend does this, and I'm not trying to call her out because I have a lot of friends that do this, so no one will know which friend I'm talking about. So I don't get tax. I shouldn't have even told you that. Whatever. Some people don't get tax refunds. Okay, some people don't based on whatever. I have some friends who get refunds. Okay, and what they do is they spend that refund as if it's like free money. Like that's your money. Like it was just that if you're a W-2, like there's a I don't want to get into the weeds of that, okay? But like a lot of people spend tax refund as if it's like money that fell on your lap. That's not true, right? And I don't my taxes are much more complicated, but whatever the case is, that is an example where you think this is like free money. And the example that I feel like I do it with is like, it's going to sound a little silly. Like I have a budget for like groceries, but I'm much more flexible because I'm really particular about what I eat or what I feed my significant other. And so I'm very, very flexible about my grocery bill. But with other things, I'm like really specific and like probably too much, right? And so I do it like that. I definitely admit that I'm much more lenient with groceries compared to other things. And then the tax refund was the example I gave you guys. So the research is in the description box. I understand that this video was a little bit all over the place because it's a mixture of just my very small knowledge of finances, right? But the psychology I understand very well. But the financial part, obviously, I don't study this stuff, but I wanted to share it with you because I am someone who's in a comfortable financial position, and it's not because I don't know, like I work, like I make millions and millions of dollars. It's not that. I'm just really, I've always been this way. I'm really specific. Right from an early age, I saved money. I don't spend anywhere near close to my income. Like I do not spend above my means in any case. And so I do have some things to say. And so I wanted to share that with you. I hope this video is helpful to somebody. Please like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.